لا إله إلا الله والله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد. قال تبارك وتعالى في شان حبيبه الكريم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا وشفيعنا ومولانا محمد معدن الجود والكرم وآله وأصحابه وبارك وسلم صلاة وسلاما عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. Alhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah, we are given another opportunity to come to the place of the worship of the one and only who is worthy of worship. And we have extolled His majesty and His greatness aloud in front of others on the way here. Some of you may not know this, but there are two Eid namazes that we have to pray. One is the one that we're all very well aware of both. One is Eid Al-Fitr, which was a month and a half ago, or rather I should say 2 months ago, in which we, on the way to the masjid, we recited the tashriq, Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar, walillahi alhamd. This is the tashriq. We do the same thing for this Eid, Eid Ul Adha, but there's a difference. When you're on the way to the place of Eid prayer, during Eid Al-Fitr, you recite the tashriq softly. And when you're on your way to the place of the Eid prayer for Yawm Al-Adha, then you recite the tashriq loudly. We're supposed to recite it loudly on the way to this prayer. Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar, walillahi alhamd. Why is there this subtle difference? Why is there this change? There are multiple reasons. But really, if you want to understand one of the deeper hidden significances behind why we recite the tashriq loudly in this time, and why that this Eid is considered the greater of the two Eids. Why is it considered the greater? First of all, we have the days of Eid in which we are prohibited from fasting. So Eid al-Fitr, the day that we break the fast, fasting on that day is haram. Same thing, today, fasting is haram. Tomorrow, fasting is haram. The day after tomorrow, fasting is haram. So, there are the days of tashriq, these days that are happening right now, in which we're not allowed to fast. We won't be able to fast until Saturday. So, this is one reason why it's considered the greater of the two Eids. But really, if you want to understand why this is the greater of the two Eids, you have to look at the significance that it holds. This day, we know it's very famous. It's associated with what? It's associated with the rituals of Hajj. And Hajj is one of the pillars of Islam, which means that if we are able to go, it is obligatory upon us to go. It is what? It's obligatory upon us to go. So today is called Yawm al-Nahr. Yesterday was called Yawm Arafah. And the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, day before yesterday, this was called Yawm al-Tarwiyah. We know the story very well. Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, he saw a dream in which he was sacrificing his son. The next day, he thought very long and hard about it to make sure that it was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not shaitan. That is called Yawm al-Tarwiyah, the day of thinking and reflecting. The day after that, he truly recognized that this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is called the day of Arafah. And the day after that, he made good on the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is Yawm al-Nahr, the day of slaughtering. And this is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exchanged the sacrifice of Ismail alayhi salam for the sacrifice of a ram, which everyone follows. These are the rituals of Hajj. But there are other significances of this day as well. For example, When Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was removing the people of Israel from Egypt, the Jews, when he was removing the Jewish people from Egypt, after this, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam told the people, I will bring to you a book from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in which certain commands and certain prohibitions are listed, so that we know the proper way to live our lives after having come out of bondage to the Egyptians. So soon after Musa alayhi salam led the Bani Israel away from Egypt, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded him to go to Mount Sinai, Tur Sinin. And this was the procedure of receiving the Torah. For 1 month, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam had to separate himself from the rest of society. He separated himself on the mountain, on Mount Sinai. For 30 days, he engaged only in those acts that can be considered worship for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He fasted. He kept himself in a state of tahara, purity, for 30 days. And after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept him on Mount Sinai for 10 more days, during which he received the Torah. At the culmination of receiving the Torah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is called Kalimullah, the addressee of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who is spoken to by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was in conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam know best to the nature of this conversation. It was not in words, it's not in the same conversation that you and I are enjoying. It's not in the same communication that we typically experience. This was a completely different experience that only a Nabi can experience. That too one that is selected for this by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Musa alayhi salam, at the height of this conversation, what does he say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How was the nature of this conversation, first of all? How is the nature? The narrations tell us that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala began His conversation with Musa alayhi salam, there was a giant cloud that descended from the sky. That cloud enveloped the entire mountain. And all the animals, all of the insects, all of the unseen creatures, even all of the angels in the area were forced to disperse. Everybody vacated the area. Vacated the area. There was no one except Musa alayhi salam present on that patch of earth. After this, the skies opened up to Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam could see the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He could see the Lawhul Mahfuz, the tablet on which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has inscribed all of the information of creation. He could see the Malaika al-Muqarrabeen. He could see those close angels like Jibreel Amin alayhi salam. And in the midst of this vision, he begins his conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is when? This is the 10th day after the 30 days. What were those 30 days? Those 30 days were the month of Dhul Qa'dah, the previous month that we just experienced. And those first 10 days were the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, the time that we are in now. So this day, the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is experiencing this. And in the midst of his conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does he ask? He asks, Rabbi arini anzur ilayk. He says, Ya Allah, you're speaking to me. You're showing me that part of your creation that no one else has seen. Ya Allah, I want to see you. Show me yourself so I can see you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's reply was, Lan tarani. A lot of people translate this as, you will never see me. That's not true. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you cannot see me. Ya Musa, you cannot see me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed this much to Musa alayhi salam, and He says, this is the height that you can see at this point. But what does He say? He says, I will reveal a little bit of the light that is associated with my presence upon the mountain in front of you. If the mountain can withstand this unveiling of light, then yes, you will soon see me. And what happened? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed a little bit of that light upon the mountain, and the mountain crumbled into dust. وَخَرَّ مُوسَى سَعِيقًا. And Musa alayhi salam fell over screaming. This was the absolute tajalli of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That a Nabi, someone who's free from sin, someone who is a step and a level, a whole height above any other human being, is able to experience this much and be overwhelmed. When is this happening? This is happening on this day, the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was so transformed by this that Imam Suyuti radiallahu ta'ala, he narrates in his book, Ad-Durr al-Manthur fi Tafsir bil-Ma'thur. He narrates that after this incident, Musa alayhi salam for a time, he had to wear a burqa, he had to wear a face veil. There is a very famous hadith in Bukhari and Muslim Sharif, where Musa alayhi salam is described by Nabi Pak sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Huzur sallallahu alayhi wasallam describes Hazrat Musa alayhi salam. He describes the vision, just the sight of Musa alayhi salam after that day. He said on that day, his vision was such that in the blackest night, over a long distance, he could see the smallest, blackest ant on the smallest, blackest stone. O kama qal sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And like I said, Imam Suyuti narrates that for a while, Musa alayhi salam had to wear a burqa, he had to wear a face veil, because the light that shone on his face after that day was so intense, no one could look upon it without going blind. There's a narration where the wife of Musa alayhi salam desired to see the face of Musa alayhi salam. So Musa alayhi salam said, you won't be able to see it, you'll go blind. So here's what we're gonna do. Cover one eye so that you can see with one eye, and then when you go blind in this eye, at least you'll have the other eye left. The wife of Musa alayhi salam, the wife of Musa alayhi salam was the daughter of Shu'aib alayhi salam. She is a daughter of Nabis herself. She understands the tajalli of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala better than anyone else. So she agrees. Musa alayhi salam lifts the veil. The sight is so shocking that she goes blind in one eye, but she also inadvertently removes her hand from her other eye. So she goes blind in the other eye as well. And Musa alayhi salam makes dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and her vision is thereby restored. This is the height of the experience of Musa alayhi salam. On one day, on this day that we are here together on, the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. But really what I would like to draw your attention back to, what is the significance of us coming out on this day? What is the significance of us reciting the tashriq loudly? It's because despite all of these experiences of these anbiya, what did their people do? What happened to the Kaaba after it was constructed? Soon thereafter, it didn't take more than 3 generations. Soon thereafter, people began to place idols in the Kaaba, such that idols were in the very foundations of the Kaaba, until Huzur sallallahu alayhi wasallam removed them just by pointing his finger on the day of the conquest of Mecca. And what happened when Musa alayhi salam came back from this amazing experience? What did he find the people doing? He found the people worshiping an idol of a calf. So it shows us what? That these experiences were not looked upon kindly by the communities of the ones who had experienced them. What does it tell us? It tells us that Huzur sallallahu alayhi wasallam is not here to bring something new. He's here to restore those things. He's here to restore those things and to bring an ummah who will accept them, to bring an ummah who will appreciate them, to bring an ummah who will always remember that there is only one worthy of worship, to bring an ummah who will always glorify the existence of that one, and to bring an ummah who will remind others by their presence, by their words and their actions, that this is the truth and reality. Why is it that you live in this society and you have so much pushback? You have pushback because you are on a way of life that is diametrically opposed to living and let living. We live and let live, but we have to acknowledge that there is a single truth behind which the entire universe was created. And it's not our job to enforce this truth. Rather, it is our job to convey this truth, even if the people in front of us dislike it. It's our job to restore. It's our job to take the path of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam and restore it for the generations to come. Not our own generations who will be born into this faith, but the generations who will come not born into this faith. This is why each and every one of you is here on this country. Otherwise, what do you have to put up with all this nonsense for? Why is it that we have to hear complaints from parents about how our children have lost the way? No, the children haven't lost the way. You and I, we've all lost the way. Until and unless you acknowledge this in your hearts, you will never be able to find peace in this land or any other land. And where do you find peace in your heart? You find peace by the acceptance of the words of Huzur sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you find acceptance of the message of Huzur sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That these things that were started, these conflicts that the other people started against these anbiya, this isn't over. This isn't a physical conflict. It's an ideological conflict. It's a spiritual conflict. You have to acknowledge this in your heart. You have to acknowledge that you're pushing back against something. And you're not pushing back for the sake of your own ego or your own livelihood. You're pushing back for the sake of the one who made you. And for the sake of the one because of whom you exist. That is Huzur sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is what we're here for. This is what we recite the tashriq aloud for. This is what we exist for. This is what we wear our clothes for. This is what we recite our Quran and our salat for. We can't just sit here and pray and pretend like everything is okay with the way we are. And honestly, I'll tell you another thing. The way you are now, everything is okay from the outside. Everything is okay from the outside. But the only thing that has to change is the priority that we have in our hearts. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us entire months in which we have to fast, in which we are in a completely different zone. And in this day, this is another day of happiness, another day of joy, another day of showing who and what we are. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us not after a whole day, a month of fasting, not after a whole bunch of worship and being in a particular zone. No, rather, this is designed to take you out of the zone that you're in. This is designed to take you out of your regular day-to-day routine. This is designed to take you out of the slump that you find yourself in after an entire month of fasting and worship. And for those who continue to fast and worship, it's also designed to take you out of your routine as well. That's why today you're not allowed to fast. That's why today, regardless of however you live your life, everybody's together and everybody is equal. Today, people who are gathered here, who are here to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to fulfill the duties that have been enjoined upon them, doesn't matter if you have fasted for the past 40 days or not. Everybody today is equal in their servitude before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a restorative practice. Restorative. Just as it's designed to restore the basis and the roots of the community, is designed to restore the state of your heart as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always keep examples in front of you as reminders of truth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always keep days for you in which you set everything aside and you remember why you're here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the beautiful thing is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't make these days necessarily days in which you have to work hard or where you have to fast or where you have to pray all the time. Rather, this is a day, this prayer is what? It's an excuse to bring everyone together. It's an excuse to make you hug and kiss the brothers and sisters that you never see except once a year. It's an excuse to remind you that the people sitting next to you, even if you never see them for the rest of your life, your actions will affect them. The actions that you do will affect the people around you. Huzur sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reported to have said the ummah is like one body. If one part feels pain, the whole part feels pain. It's a double-edged sword. It goes both ways. If one part of the ummah feels pain, you might feel pain. But if you do something bad, you're not the only one who undergoes the consequences. If I hit my hand hard against the wall, my hand might hurt for a little bit, but eventually some parts of my nerves might be affected too. Maybe my hand will start twitching afterwards. Maybe my other pinky will start twitching. Maybe my eye will start twitching. We don't even know how certain actions we do affect our bodies. What about an entire body and a community of people? The things that you do, they affect Muslims in China. And I'm not talking about whether you give money or not. That's a different issue. I'm talking about the things you do in your daily life, the things you do in private, things you do with your families. That affects Muslims in China, that affects Muslims in Palestine, that affects Muslims everywhere else. And the things they do in turn affect you too. Don't think that you're in this alone. As far as you're in this world, this day is a reminder that you're in this world together. But it's not doom and gloom. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps this as an Eid. He keeps this as a time where instead of reminding each other about how bad we are, we remind each other of how beautiful we are by showing smiles to each other, by reminding each other that no matter what, you have that light of Iman in your heart. All you need to do is polish it a little bit. You don't even need to polish it actually. All you need to do is direct it a little bit. Give it a little bit of direction. Listen to a couple of nice words. Give a couple of nice words to your brother. This is enough. I promise you, as someone standing next to the mimbar in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's enough. That's enough. Just change your intention. This is why in the beginning of every single book that is considered sahih by the ummah, the first hadith that is written and recorded is innamal a'malu bin niyat. Actions are only by intentions. All you have to do is fix that thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps days and reminders, not in which you have to work hard, but in which you relax, in which you chill out, in which you meet your friends and family, in which you eat together. And maybe if you eat alone, doesn't matter. But it's a day on which you're kept relaxed and happy. These are the reminders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not always remind you by sticking you with a jolt of electricity. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has that method as well. But remember, there's a hadith Qudsi, Huzur sallallahu alayhi wasallam relates that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna rahmati la sabaqat ghadabi. My mercy truly, sincerely predominates my wrath. The methods that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses to bring us back, and the methods that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses to remind us, they're always pleasant, they're always nice, they're always gentle, they're always happy. And sometimes He pokes you a little bit here and there too. This is the reason why we're here. There's so much context to the day of sacrifice. There's so much significance. What we do is not something that we made up. This is not something that we invented. This is something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has enjoined for generations upon generations, for communities upon communities. And at the end of the day, what's the ultimate lesson you can take away? That without acceptance of the messenger, Nabi Pak Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, without acceptance of him, your restoration is never complete. The message is never complete. The practice is never complete. The intention is never complete. We have a last and final messenger that is here to restore humanity. And the best and most beautiful way you can do that is to start today. Hug your fellow brothers and sisters. Well, I mean brothers hug brothers and sisters hug sisters. You know what I mean. Hug each other. Show each other happiness. Not for the sake of the day, not for the sake of your mood, but for the sake of the one who gathered you here, and for the sake of His beloved, the one because of whom you are gathered here. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. It's 10 o'clock, so everybody, if you could get up and make your line straight. I'm going to... Oh, I'm sorry. Before everybody stand up, but I'm going to have the volunteers come around and make some collections, okay? And while they're collecting, I'm going to walk you through as many times as I can the method of Eid prayer.